I have to address the big red letter in the room. The Mr. Plinkett reviews by Red Letter Media are probably the best analysis of the Star Wars prequels on the internet.
You think to yourself, that was weird, but I'm not gay. You are. You are gay.
And unfortunately for me, they are incredibly in-depth. These movies have been around for a while, and there's almost nothing I can say that hasn't already been said by someone. But you guys have been demanding that I review these movies for years now, and I do have a lot to say. So I'm just going to go in with a clear mind and put the good old Cosmonaut spin on things. Because I do not like these movies.
You're saying Plinkett's was the best analysis, really?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
He was not only biased, but even made false statements about the movies that aren't even true, without any proof or backing, such as the yes man argument. First off, when did George Lucas ever get surrounded by yes men? If you write and direct a movie, then you're in charge of the overall product, the product in its entirety, meaning you get the final say. So regardless of who you work with, you're still the one writing and directing. So it's yes men, it's people who are part of the project, but they aren't writing or directing it, so inevitably you get the final say. Plinkett turned this into he was surrounded by yes men. Such bullshit. The reason it's bullshit is because he has nothing to base this on. Imagine if I gave you this speech and said, oh, George Lucas hates David Filoni. What proof did I provide? None. Plinkett is guilty of the same thing. They said the same thing about the creators of Legend of Korra in regards to them having, quote, too much creative control. Now what they should be saying is that, maybe some creatives have or eventually get too much creative control over their own property. That's what Plinkett and them should be saying, although I think the statement is untrue in every way possible. Still, that's a better way of saying what they're trying to say than to just say, oh, the yes man argument. There's nothing to base that on, and people take Plinkett's word as gospel and claim he has this deep intellectual analysis when he focused more on humor and comedy than staying on point, and even made false claims without proof or evidence and spread it as gospel.
So I'm just going to go in with a clear mind and put the good old Cosmonaut spin on things. Because I do not like these movies.
Cosmonaut says, I do not like these movies. People say they're bad and state, oh no, now every time I see the original trilogy, I can't get these movies out of my head. Oh really? So every time I see the original trilogy, now I can't get the sequels out of my head because they invalidate the previous 6 films, break the lore and characters so hard that what they did had a permanent effect on the overall saga altogether. Now every time you see it, it will always be associated with the entirety of the 6 films. So how can you say, oh, I can't get these movies out of my head when it's the new trilogy? I can't get those movies out of my head. So that's the same feeling. So if you're going to apply that to the prequels, you got to be consistent and apply that right over to the new trilogy. And unlike the new trilogy, the prequels don't invalidate the original trilogy. People even accuse it of such, but it doesn't. Claiming Yoda with his lightsaber, no. He had a lightsaber in the prequel trilogy, then no longer had it in the original. That's a simple explanation. Him having a lightsaber prior to Dagobah doesn't invalidate the original trilogy. Where do people get this from? There's no proof or evidence of that, but in the new trilogy actually does. Breaking the lore, breaking the rules of what Star Wars is, only the new trilogy did that. Even people who hate the prequels admit and say, oh, they don't like it, but they at least think that, well, these movies aren't all that great, but at least they aren't disrespectful. Or at least they don't invalidate the previous stories. Even people who hate the prequels think those things. The prequel trilogy expanded the lore, but it didn't break characters' consistency. It didn't break the lore. It didn't invalidate stories you experienced in the original trilogy. But the new trilogy invalidates the original trilogy stories. So when you go back, there's that feeling of, man, these movies are now associated with the original trilogy. He says, I do not like these movies. So many people state this in the Star Wars community, not realizing they got influenced by someone online rather than watching the film without someone else's opinion inserted into their heads. It's just overblown at this point.
This is why you're stupid.
I barely even like them ironically. These movies are not a guilty pleasure for me, because when I watch them I feel no pleasure, only guilt. Like I said in the last video, you have to be brainwashed into liking these movies. I know this because I was brainwashed.
Like I said in the last video, you have to be brainwashed into liking these movies. I know this because I was brainwashed. Like I said in the last video, you have to be brainwashed into liking these movies. I know this because I was brainwashed.
You're assuming that the only way for people to like the prequel trilogy is to be brainwashed. Or it couldn't be the fact that someone actually likes the movies, the compelling narrative, the thought-provoking dialogue, intelligent storytelling, strong world building, represented the entire other side of the argument like they don't know cinema. You always do this, Cosmonaut. He always does this. He always represents fans of the prequels like they just don't know good films. Very biased. Could it be that there's aspects of the movie we appreciate? He even claimed the X-Men films weren't all that and got on the Spider-Man movies directed by Sam Raimi. The early 2000s Spider-Man films, he talked about those too and said those were whack. They were more humorous and not meant to be taken seriously and all that. He always does this. Cosmonaut always does this, and it's so annoying. Falsely representing other sides of the argument about the prequels and getting on some of the most compelling and profound filmmaking of our day. And what he says is untrue, especially taking into account what he says about people who appreciate the prequels. Quite false. And he falsely represents people who are advocates for those films, allowing the influence of red letter media to dictate his own opinions and perspective on the films. I urge many of you to not let red letter media determine the film's quality. Let that be judged by you assessing for yourself on your own terms, without someone else's bias but with an open mind. People actually appreciate the movies for the story, the world building, the thought-provoking dialogue. People have legitimate reasons for why they appreciate the movie.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
They came out with these boring-ass movies with a racist Jamaican caricature alien, and they sold us toys and video games and Halloween costumes. And this was my whole childhood. New movie, new video games, new toys, Star Wars potato chips, Star Wars candy. Star Wars was everywhere, and I liked Star Wars a lot, bro. I was watching Star Wars since before the prequels even came out.
I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
It truly fucking blows my mind that people are only just now mad at Star Wars for being a cash grab franchise that only cares about merchandise. They seriously act like Disney's the only reason Star Wars is trying to make money? What fucking planet have you been living on? Star Wars has always been like this.
Star Wars Micro Machine.
People are only just now mad at Star Wars for being a cash grab franchise? Well, that's just blatantly wrong. First off, that's false because, dude, when Disney bought Star Wars, actually, let me back up. First off, when George Lucas owned Star Wars, yes, it became a successful business to the likes people have never seen. But, it wasn't just about money or cash. He cared about his story and characters, and they paid respect to that entire world and universe. You're forgetting the expanded universe comics. You're forgetting the fact that people didn't just buy the toys but were invested into Star Wars as a brand, the entire world. It's not just like Disney to where they just wanted to capitalize on the original trilogy. They didn't even use George Lucas's outlines, and they destroyed the entire expanded universe material and only wanted to capitalize on the original trilogy. So when people say, oh, they just care about the money, that's facts. They proved it through their actions, so that's actually true. There's a total difference. People need to realize this. There is a total difference from how George Lucas treated Star Wars when he owned it and how Disney treated Star Wars.
Star Wars Micro Machines. There's a cool adventure in every collection.
New Star Wars Micro Machines. Machines so iconic, they're legendary.
And when the prequel train started revving up, it was just time for more merchandise. It was a good time to be an impressionable little kid who loves Star Wars, and back then I didn't have the mental capacity to judge these movies. Nobody in my age group did.
Back then, I didn't have the mental capacity to judge these films. No one did. Don't assume what other people are thinking. When I was a kid, we understood the film. Me and my friends back in 2nd grade, so that's not true. Plus, George Lucas even stated the movies are for kids. I believe personally, they're for everybody. And truth is, every age group imaginable watches Star Wars, doesn't even matter. And when I was a kid, we watched the films, understood and loved them. People loved all of them back then. You fail to realize George Lucas respects the mind of a kid. That's why he said he made them for kids. And again, I say they're for everybody. And me and my friends, when we were kids, understood it too, so that's not true. You can't assume and say no one understood just because they're a kid. When I was a kid, me and my friends understood the films just fine. I even sat and listened to the political moments and didn't have a problem following the story, so that's untrue. Don't assume.
We saw the lightsabers and we were on board. We didn't give a shit. I think everybody has that moment where they're watching the prequels after having grown up a bit and they realize, Jesus Christ, what did I like about these movies?
I think everybody had that moment when they grew up and said, what did I like about these movies? Dude, that's an opinion. You can't make it like your opinions are law across the board for everyone else who saw the films.
This might be hard to believe, but are you aware that nobody gives a shit?
First off, most of that feeling, I've been there. Actually, that's how I know it's bullshit, because most of that comes from red letter media influence and original trilogy purist rhetoric. They keep spreading their influence across the internet, and people go online. First, they loved the films as a kid, appreciated the aspects of the movies that make it great. Then they see that stuff online, and it influences them, so when they rewatch, they watch from that perspective, from who they saw online, instead of seeing the movie with a clear head and with an open mind.
That moment where you realize that you don't actually understand the plot of any of these movies.
That moment when you realize you don't understand the plot. Okay, Cosmonaut, no, you don't understand the plot. So if you don't understand, don't assume just because you didn't get it, people didn't. That's an assumption based on you not getting it. Well, you can't assume others wouldn't get it just because you didn't. I saw Attack of the Clones as a kid. I understood the entire plot. Then got older, still understood the entire plot. Then met friends, some of them actually liked it. They understood the entire plot. So no, you don't know what other people are thinking. And you couldn't know because you're not them. That's an assumption. You don't understand. Don't assume other people don't understand the plot if you're the one that doesn't understand it. Number 1, the plot of A Phantom Menace. The Trade Federation is formulating a blockade on Naboo over greed. The Jedi are sent in to quell the issue. Number 2, Attack of the Clones. The CIS is growing stronger, taking over more systems. The Republic has no military force and needs an army. Hence the Clone Wars, the interworkings and beginnings of the Clone Wars. Number 3, Anakin may lose the woman he loves and begins having conflicts within himself about what choice he should make. The Council is growing more suspicious of Chancellor Palpatine, and the Jedi are winning the war, but the CIS are turning against the Jedi Order, using Anakin's fear of losing who he loves against him, which pits him against the Jedi Order in order to save the woman he loves. Thus, he falls from grace and turns to the dark side. I thought you said people don't understand the plot. Just because you didn't, you can't assume others didn't just because you didn't get the plot. And the thing is, if you don't understand the story or plot, why assume that others don't get something just because you don't?
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
That's really what it all boils down to.
That they're boring and the acting is bad and there's just no good aspect to enjoy. Once my generation got older and we realized these movies were bad, there was peace on the internet for a brief time. It was widely accepted that the Star Wars prequels were not good movies.
Once your generation made it to the internet and realized the movies were bad, there was peace? First off, people trashed the films for over 20 years. You call that peace? You've seen Red Letter Media's videos, so how can you see those and see all the other content artists out there have made, and then turn around and say it was a peaceful time? People were trashing and demeaning the films, period. They were trashing those films for years. That's not peace, that's people who don't like the movie. If people around the world dislike something and make it publicly known at all times, how is it even remotely peace? That's the exact opposite.
For a brief time, it was widely accepted that the Star Wars prequels were not good movies, and there wasn't anybody alive who unironically liked them.
There wasn't anybody alive who unironically liked them. How could you assume what other people like? Where are you getting this from? You can't assume how other people think. Let me get this straight. Just because you didn't like the movie, you assume no one else did as well? Dude, that's just over the top. You can't assume just because you didn't like it, others didn't. That's an assumption. You don't have anything to base that on, so why even go there?
This is why you're stupid.
So you're shocked that people actually like the movies? So your issue is that you think everyone should all naturally hate them? Dude, come on. That's so foolish and egotistical and beyond the realm of reality. In the sense of, oh, I hate it, therefore the whole world should hate it. That you're actually thinking on that level. Dude, come on. That's so beyond the realms of reality. You can't sit there and act like somehow your perspective should be gospel across the world. Yes, people actually appreciate the film.
There was no more world hunger, racism was over, and we as a species had finally achieved world peace. And then Disney started making Star Wars movies.
This is a nightmare!
And now all of a sudden people are saying the prequels are good? What the fuck happened? I've seen so many people unironically defend these movies and then turn around and shit on other bad movies like Suicide Squad or Batman v Superman, even though they all share the same exact issues. Overly expensive movies with bad effects and worse writing.
Shit on other bad movies because they like the prequels but then turn around and shit on other bad movies. Dude, who cares? You like what you like. Sometimes you like a movie, sometimes you freaking don't. Everybody doesn't have to feel how you feel about the movies. That's so stupid. Plus, people can't judge someone's film taste based off of a movie they like. So let's say a person likes this bad movie, but they also like A Clockwork Orange. Do they suddenly have bad taste just because they like a movie other people call bad? No. They still like A Clockwork Orange. They still like other films. And when you have a film others don't like, and you like it anyway, it doesn't matter. You still have other stuff you like too. So why would that apply? It's so foolish. Making a claim that if you like a film, it determines your film taste. No, it doesn't. You could like one film that others don't, but still have good taste in movies. Batman v Superman doesn't have the same flaws people associated with the prequels. That's like saying the new Terminator movie has the same flaws as the first Avatar film from James Cameron. No, these have totally different issues. You can't compare one to the other. Also, Batman v Superman gets way too much flack. When I first went out to see it, I thought it might not be all that. Then I saw it and was shocked at how good it was. And Ben Affleck's performance was one of the best Batmans I've ever seen on screen. Shockingly, he's that good, and he matched Snyder's universe quite well. So yeah, that movie is underappreciated, just throwing that out there.
And way too many people are saying that the prequels are redeemed because they're better than the new movies. Now, first of all, the new movies aren't even that bad.
These movies aren't that bad. Well, people trashed the prequels for over 20 years and said, oh no, now I can't get these movies out of my head. But when we have new films that actually invalidate the previous by breaking the lore, and its characters even, people start realizing, man, those prequels aren't that bad. Sound familiar?
I don't love every aspect of them, but I cannot call them bad movies. I honestly have full respect for people who hate the prequels and the sequels equally. I think that's totally fair. What kills me is when people say these movies are good and these aren't.
Hating the sequels and prequels equally. Well, I agree. If you hate the prequels, you might as well hate the new trilogy too. I defended The Last Jedi for over 5 years. I'm done. Me personally, the prequels are some of the most underrated and brilliant pieces of cinema out there. You say the new trilogy isn't even that bad, well I say the prequel trilogy is incredible and people give it way too much flack. What kills me is when people say these movies hence the prequels are good, but these movies hence the sequel trilogy are not. Who cares? That's just their perspective. You hate on the prequels and no one gets on you about it, although now someone's refuting your statement absolutely. However, still no one thrashed you like you're thrashing them for thinking the prequels are good and the sequels aren't. Well, you think the sequels are good or decent, at least, and the prequels aren't. No one got on you for that, but you get to thrash people for thinking the prequels are better. Come on. You get to have your opinion. Let the world bathe in their opinion as well. Why get on others for not liking the new trilogy or liking the prequels over them? People can't force themselves to like the new films. I defended The Last Jedi for years. I don't want to do that no more. I don't like the new films. It's that simple. People are allowed to like what they like and dislike what they don't like. Nobody gets on you for hating on the prequels, so to say that is so contradictory.
Oh, at least the prequels had some original ideas. Who the fuck says shit like this?
The prequels had original ideas. Who the fuck says shit like this? What? All they're saying is that the movies were original. Why is this suddenly a foreign language to you? You're overblowing it so hard, dude. You need to let it go and accept the fact that people like the movies. It's like you can't even fathom a world where people actually appreciate it. That's so backwards.
Original ideas aren't enough to make a movie good.
Original ideas aren't enough to make a movie good. You're assuming that just the only thing people appreciate about it are just the ideas and concepts, or just the fact that it was original. No, people like the entire thing. Gary and Blue said something similar, although he was more direct about this. You're implying that by stating, oh, people say it has original ideas, so that must be why they like it. No, it's not just the original ideas, it's the plot, the story, the execution, the characters, the thought-provoking dialogue, the lightsaber duels, the incredible storytelling. the loyalty of characters, and expansion of the original trilogy that complements the original film's style. There's more to the films than just the ideas or concepts.
And something can still be good without having original ideas. Stranger Things doesn't have a single original idea at all, and it's generally seen to be pretty good. Everybody likes it.
Stranger Things doesn't have an original idea at all. You are so backwards it's not even funny. First off, Stranger Things took inspiration from things like The Goonies and things like Stephen King and made their own unique story you can separate from every other creative medium out there. So that's not true. You dumbass. You are so backwards it's not even funny. You fucking dingaling. It's not even funny. First off, Stranger Things took inspiration from things like The Goonies and things like Stephen King, you dingaling, and made their own unique story you could separate from every other creative medium out there, so that's not true. Second off, you know how many original ideas spawned from the 80s inspired show? And you're gonna say it wasn't original just because it took inspiration? It took inspiration from 80s material like Stephen King. It had its own original plot, so that's not true. It was just inspired by those things. It wasn't the same story.
The prequels have a lot of unique ideas, yeah, and they're not presented in a good way at all in these movies.
The Jedi! What do you know?
If you thought this was going to be a video about me praising the prequels, then I'm sorry. You probably don't know me very well. Maybe we can be friends in another life.
If you thought this video was going to be me praising the prequels, then you're mistaken. Yeah, whatever. And that's what Cosmonaut states. And dude, I know you and many other Plinkett fanboys sucking on Plinkett's dick out there hating on the films like it's a hobby. I was already prepared and knew off the bat, with your constant dick sucking of red letter media already in the beginning of your video anyway. You guys always hate on these movies on a constant basis.
Today I'm going to try and bring these movies back down a peg, because I hate them, and when people disagree with me I feel uncomfortable. Now before I start tearing into the movie, I should be fair and talk about the good things. This isn't the worst movie ever made, so it has to have some positive qualities, right? So, the music is pretty good. The thing is, almost every aspect of this movie that's sort of okay has a little asterisk right above it. I want to say the effects are good because a lot of them are technically very impressive. For a movie that came out in 1999, Jar Jar looks pretty good, but the effects aren't always integrated into the movie in a convincing way. I mean, the pod racing scene is pretty cool because it's the only time in the movie where you feel like you're not dead. That's probably the only enjoyable scene other than the final battle. And I'd say the final battle is the one scene that is so cool it tricked people into liking this movie for just a little bit after it came out. Sometimes an exciting ending can fool an audience into thinking a movie is good, and this final battle is actually pretty dope. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to enjoy it when you realize that you don't care about any of the things that are happening in this movie.
You don't care about anything happening on screen because you don't care about the character? Well, that's because you didn't pay attention to how they were developed on screen. That's because you didn't pay attention to how they were developed on film and their moments of chemistry and dialogue. These moments are in the film. It's not thrown at you at all times. It's subtle. You didn't pay attention to the movie or its characters, but you want to judge them and speak with authority on something you claimed yourself you don't even understand the plot to. Wow.
There is also one single line that I kind of like in this movie.
Perhaps I killed a Jedi and took it from him.
I don't think so. No one can kill a Jedi.
I wish that were so.
I kind of like the subtle foreshadowing in that line, and that's one of the only times I'm ever going to call these movies subtle, so enjoy it. But the main positive in this movie is definitely the music. The John Williams score is always the one aspect of these movies that is on point. I want to believe that old Johnny saw these movies and was like, okay, I gotta try to fix these as best as I can. But it is kind of unintentionally funny sometimes because you'll be visually looking at nothing happening in these movies, but the music will be popping the fuck off.
Nothing happening on screen, but the movie will pop off. You idiot. Nothing happening? Dude, it's the Battle of Naboo Theed. What in the world do you mean nothing happening, you dumbass? Something is happening. It's the Battle of Naboo Theed on screen. And you're saying nothing is happening? What are you talking about? See, again, somebody didn't pay attention to the film. Didn't pay attention to the dialogue or characters or chemistry. In the scene he's referring to, he's saying the music pops off even when nothing is going on. Where are you getting this from? First off, the scene had build-up and cinematography too. Then after the build-up, given what happened when Qui-Gon and Padme fought in Naboo, and had to get to the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation was invading Naboo at the time, so what do you mean nothing was going on, you ding-a-ling?
This is why you're stupid.
Something was. Qui-Gon and Padme were trying to stop Naboo's invasion. So when you say nothing was going on, you literally sound like a person who just didn't watch the movie. All you had to do was thoroughly watch the movie so you actually know what you're talking about because you didn't pay attention. Qui-Gon and Padme were in the midst of stopping the Naboo invasion through infiltration. All you had to do was not only read the title crawl, but pay attention to the scenes on screen. The music is popping off because the Naboo guard and Padme made it, and they are fighting off the Trade Federation, so it doesn't pop off when quote-unquote nothing is going on. Something was the Naboo invasion. That's why you have to pay attention to the film.
That's all I can say in the way of praise. These movies honestly fail at almost every level of filmmaking.
These movies fail at every level of filmmaking. According to what? It's not like it has impeccable cinematography. It's not like they actually had moments of subtlety with their characters. It's not like they actually had elements in the movie that served a purpose and developed aspects of the original trilogy. You know, honestly, people wouldn't even be all over the prequels nearly as much if they didn't get so influenced by red letter media. So the movies have moments of incredible cinematography. The movies have moments of thought-provoking dialogue. The movies have moments where the characters and actors sound good and have good chemistry. You don't even acknowledge these moments, and instead you just make bold claims about it based on what someone else like Plinkett would say. You have to watch the films with an open mind without letting the bias of other people get in the way of giving it a fair shot. People don't give it this chance and instead allow other influencers to influence how they feel about the movie. If you just saw it and actually understood the plot and see it with an open mind without anyone else's opinions about it being there, you might feel differently. And I know because, fun fact, I made the same mistake. I loved all 6 movies growing up. Then I got to high school and fell for the red letter media bandwagon myself. People aren't actually thinking for themselves when it comes to red letter media. People instead are allowing other people to influence their point of view. Watch the film for yourself with an open mind without a bias.
So we are going to watch this movie with the same framework that we watched A New Hope in. For the first time, I'm going to try to watch this movie with my fully evolved film brain. I'm going to pretend as if I have never seen this movie before. And right off the bat, the opening title crawl is just too much.
You think to yourself, that was weird, but I'm not gay. You are. You are gay.
Right off the bat, the opening title call is too much. Didn't you say something about the fact that I can't understand the plot? So if you can't understand what's going on, don't you think the title call is the perfect way to understand? Instead, you're going to brush off the entire movie's plot, say it's bad, don't even understand the plot, then you have a chance to understand the plot, but the title call is too much. Maybe that's why you don't even know the plot, because you didn't even think to read the title crawl, and you want to thoroughly assess or judge a film and you don't even know the plot and can't even read the title crawl?
Remember when I talked about how perfect the title crawl is in A New Hope? It's simple, effective, and it doesn't throw too much information at us.
A New Hope's title crawl is simple and effective. Okay, so the title crawl is a little more complex and you couldn't read it?
This is why you're stupid.
I could read that as a kid. You can't read the title crawl, Cosmonaut? Are you telling me that you couldn't read a simple title crawl and you want to say I don't know the plot? That's not the movie's fault for you not being able to read a simple title crawl. That's you. What in the world? He is speaking with authority on the subject matter, trashing these films like tons of other people do on a daily basis. And he couldn't even read the title crawl, but he wants to tell people these movies are trash. How could you assess a film that you don't even know the plot to? Maybe the reason he doesn't know the plot is because he didn't read the title crawl.
This is the first paragraph in the Phantom Menace title crawl.
Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute.
The trade route information dump joke. Okay, I'll admit that was funny. Still, you gotta know what you're talking about if you're gonna say prequels suck. You even admitted yourself that you don't even know the plot. Ask many prequel haters out there this one question. What is the plot of A Phantom Menace? Watch them get silent, but they'll say, oh, these movies are such shit, and they can't even explain the plot. When you think someone saying a movie is bad, they'd at least know the plot to it? The tone of the movie is fucking boring. Well, people spout the same regurgitated points of red letter media. That's fucking boring. Why? Red letter media took behind the scenes out of context and called George Lucas a fraud, without a modicum of proof. He had no proof for the saved in editing, which had actually been disproven, and he had no proof for the yes man argument, yet people still state this. And this is who you guys want to take your word from? Someone who spreaded an opinion as fact without a shred of proof? Oh, the movies aren't good enough, they're trash, they're the shit of the earth. These movies are worse than the sequels. You guys can't even explain the plot to a Phantom Menace, and you want people to take your word for the plot of the movie when you can't even explain the plot yourself?
There are no signs of life in this movie at all. The performances are stiff. The lines are dry and lifeless.
The performances are stiff and lifeless. No, the performances, there's some great performances in there. Like Qui-Gon Jinn, his actor, who has been in many films, his acting was impeccable. And Ewan McGregor, he was a younger Obi-Wan and still matched the character. The cinematography and environment was expanded well and fleshed out. You came at the movies with a preconceived bias off the bat. That's probably why you feel that way. Subtle. The acting was subtle at times instead of being in your face all the time with personality, emotion, this and that all the time like in the new trilogy. They tried super hard to emote at all times in the new trilogy. But you want to get on the prequels? Yeah, they aren't being all over the top every 5 seconds like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, quipping all the time, constant humor and all that. Instead, they went for a different approach. There's even moments of subtlety. They don't throw their emotions in your face every 5 seconds, so what? It's different, not like the new trilogy has its own unique feel that is underappreciated. It's refreshing to see a Star Wars movie that isn't constantly telling you how you're supposed to feel all the time. Instead, the prequels is more tame and a little more subtle with those things, so it's a refreshing watch.
And the movie isn't even directed in an engaging way. Everybody kind of talks the same, and it's really awkward. Like, who the fuck talks like this?
This is incredible. We recommend a commission be sent to Naboo to ascertain the truth.
The Congress of Manosphere concurs with the Honorable Delegate from the Trade Federation.
Who the fuck talks like this? Okay, first off, there's a lot of important moments about the invasion of Naboo and the taxation and blockade. That's important, and you need to know about it, so you understand what's going on and why Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are out there. Second of all, who the fuck talks like this, really? They're in space. It's a galaxy far, far away. Who cares? Is the story good? Dude, look, it's a galaxy far, far away. They aren't going to speak like how we speak here on Earth. So what in the world are you getting on their speech for? But in the original trilogy, everything was just pitch perfect. Even A New Hope had moments of politics. Get over it. Who cares? A political scene doesn't defeat a movie. Them talking different from how they spoke in the original trilogy doesn't defeat a movie. It means they're in a galaxy billions of light years away. Did you really expect them to talk the same as we do on Earth? Then he shows all these clips and makes fun of the political moments. Dude, those scenes are exactly why you don't understand what's going on. Those political scenes show you what is going on. And you keep saying, oh, I don't know the plot, I don't even know what's going on. You would know if you paid attention to these scenes. You keep making fun of them, so focused on making fun of them, not assessing or analyzing what they are or meant. This is why you don't get it, because instead of assessing, you're just making jokes about them and not analyzing beneath the surface of the scene.
This might be hard to believe, but are you aware that nobody gives a shit?
When you start the movie, you might think that the Jedi just talk in this weird, overly wordy way because they're like warrior monks. I kind of accept the fact that they talk weird.
You might think the Jedi talk in this weird, overly wordy way because they're monks, or it's because they're in a galaxy far, far away. Again, I reiterate, did you really think that people in outer space were going to talk the way they talk here on Earth?
But everybody fucking talks like this, except the Jamaican and the literal child. And while they may sound different, their line delivery is on another fucking level.
You mean I get to come with you in your starship?
See, George has this weird problem where his dialogue is kind of the worst thing about his movies.
His dialogue is the worst thing about his movies. First off, there are so many moments, just in that film alone, A Phantom Menace, where the dialogue is intelligent and thought-provoking as hell, and even expanded on the Force and deeper concepts and motifs. The original trilogy had motifs, the prequels had this subtle through its dialogue, and you guys don't even acknowledge this. Instead, you just immediately trash it, and it's because you're not paying attention to the movie. The moments where the dialogue is subtle, the moments where the acting is really good, the moments where they expand on the Force and have motifs and thought-provoking dialogue. The level of intelligent storytelling and dialogue that is in the prequels is unprecedented for its time, especially for the time it came out. These moments occupy so much of the movie, it makes it a fulfilling experience to watch. All you had to do was pay attention to the movie.
I'm not lying, man. Even in the original Star Wars, the instant classic, his actors constantly made fun of him for his dialogue.
And then I started reading, and it seemed to me the dialogue was pretty ropey.
The actors made fun of George for his dialogue. Oh yeah, he still wrote the book Star Wars is based on. It's called Adventures of Starkiller and Anakin Solo. He also wrote and directed A New Hope, so for how corny you may find his dialogue, it sure as hell inspired and resonated with audiences and people for years and years. Now I know he had some people help with the dialogue, but he still wrote it overall. And people forget George Lucas is still the one who wrote and directed A New Hope. That means he had creative control over that film and the final say. Therefore, if you love and appreciate the dialogue and storytelling in the movie, that's because of George Lucas. He directed and wrote it.
It's a true story. Harrison Ford, who plays the space pirate in the film, at one point threatened to tie George up and make him say his own lines at gunpoint.
But back then, he had a team to help him fix up the script and make it sound like lines that real people would say.
He had a team that helped him fix up the script and make it sound more like what real people would say. No, he had the final say. He wrote and directed it. Why are you spreading that argument, the saved and editing thing? Lucas had some help, but he was still the one writing the dialogue, writing the story. He even wrote the book, then wrote and directed the movie. So why are you spreading this false narrative that Plinkett spread without a modicum of proof? People have been claiming George wasn't in creative control of A New Hope. This is false. He had the final say, wrote and directed, and even wrote the book it's based on. Stop spreading that false gospel as truth. It's false.
Star Wars should be simple. We just saw Han Solo talking like a regular fucking guy, and now all the characters talk like weird Shakespeare robots.
Now all the characters talk like weird Shakespeare robots. No, they're in a galaxy far, far away, so they aren't going to sound the same as what you'd associate with the original trilogy. The original trilogy had its own way of conveying its characters. It took place during a different time of the Star Wars timeline, so they aren't going to talk the same in different times either. Different times, different ways of speaking. You trashing it and saying it sucks because they speak the way they talk is foolish, because really at that point you'd have to look at the original trilogy. They had tons of moments of corny ass dialogue. There are so many moments in the original trilogy where I'm like, man, that was corny. So you can't even begin to start all that talk about these movies when even the originals had huge moments of corny ass dialogue. The original trilogy had moments of corny ass dialogue. The new trilogy had moments of corny ass dialogue. Let's go, Chrome Dome. The Star Wars saga has moments of corny ass dialogue. Why are you singling out one trilogy for what the entire saga is guilty of?
And that's a word that I've heard people use to describe this dialogue. Shakespearean. But that's honestly using the word wrong, in my opinion. I've always seen a work as Shakespearean when we talk about how the actions of
the dialogue is Shakespearean. No, they talk different from how people talk on Earth because they're in a galaxy far, far away. Nobody said anything in the original trilogy when they spoke corny. So why get on the prequels for how they spoke when they're in a galaxy billions of light years away? Did you really expect them to talk the way people talk on Earth? I keep reiterating this because that's how people are acting. The original trilogy gets a free pass because its dialogue is more grounded. Yes, the original trilogy was grounded. The prequels was grounded too. It was still grounded as well. People forget that. But its dialogue was different from the original trilogy. Well, it took place prior to the original trilogy, so it makes sense that if it's in a different time period, they sound different.
The characters dictate their emotions. It's less about what they say and more about how they feel.
It's less about what they say and how they feel. Okay, interesting. There's this scene in Revenge of the Sith. There is no dialogue whatsoever. It's just Anakin contemplating what to do in conflict, and Padme in conflict, contemplating what to do. How they feel is conveyed through just the emotions of the actor in music and cinematography. It was so haunting, so powerful, a powerful moment in the Star Wars saga, and it was well directed. This didn't have any dialogue. All it did was show, it didn't tell. Therefore, if there's moments like this in the prequel trilogy, how could you say that like they didn't apply it when it's there? There's proof. All you have to do is see Revenge of the Sith or even the other films that also have moments just like it.
It's not just Shakespearean because they talk funny. It's annoying and it makes it impossible to connect to the characters.
It's annoying and it makes it hard to connect with the characters. No, I don't care how they talk. I care about how developed is the character or how well written they are. how they're conveyed and stuff like that. That's more important than how they talk. How they talk is not as important as what you do with the character. That's all that matters.
And this manner of speech makes it so that we never really know who these characters are on a deeper level.
We never know who these characters are on a deeper level. While that's not true, the lines and dialogue in the movie gives you just enough context about the character to where you don't need to know their backstory. You know who they are from how they presented themselves in the film. You know through their dialogue, through their characterization. The characterization was so strong that you have an understanding of the character in the film. You don't need the backstory of that character thrown in your face just to understand. There's enough characterization to where you understand the character. They also don't talk about how they feel. You don't have to talk about how you feel to convey emotion. Emotion is something you convey, period. That's just something that happens. You don't need to talk about it just to convey it. Also, people have different ways of conveying emotion, so spouting that like it's a flaw is such a fallacy. That's honestly a subjective statement anyway, so you can't spread that as if it's objective when that's a subjective statement. Oh, they don't talk about how they feel. Super subjective, because the character doesn't have to talk about how they feel to convey the character.
And all of the dialogue is just to tell us what is literally happening in the story.
The dialogue is just telling us what is happening in the plot. There are moments that aren't like this throughout the movie, so you're already wrong there. But then A New Hope had tons of moments when they were explaining the plot out loud through dialogue. So when the original trilogy does this, suddenly it's okay. And they even had moments of politics too. But when the prequels does, suddenly it's condemned. Original trilogy purists and their double standards. By the way, there's moments of chemistry and dialogue, so to say these scenes don't serve a purpose is so false. Where are you getting this from? When they finally do convey emotion, it comes after a lot of build-up, which makes great storytelling, so some of the best moments of dialogue and chemistry stem from this. After all the build-up, then they finally do it, and it has an impact. That's what makes the dialogue work so well, because there's actually build-up behind it. And there's actual scenes where the characters do show chemistry and emotion, and people don't even acknowledge. They skip those scenes, they never bring it up. And there are actual scenes where the characters do show chemistry and emotion. There are many moments like this, it's just not shown at all times like in the new trilogy, and it's done the same exact way like in the original trilogy. There are even moments that connect you to the creative style and feel of the original trilogy. It's just executed in a different manner. So it even has moments of the creative style and feel of the original, yet it's executed different and making it unique.
Characters coming up with a plan. Characters coming up with a plan and meeting someone new. Characters making a deal and coming up with a plan. Characters talking about the plot and what's happening. Characters coming up with a plan. Characters coming up with a plan. Inappropriate flirting.
You're a funny little boy.
Characters coming up with a plan. Do you see the fucking problem here? There are very few scenes of our characters being normal people and expressing emotions in this movie. There is legitimately only one scene of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon talking to each other about anything that isn't the immediate plot. The only time they have a fucking heart-to-heart is at the end of the movie. For 99% of the runtime, these characters have no relationship to one another, and we never learn how they feel about each other. Yet we're expected to care when this happens. This movie also has some of the most flat performances I've ever seen.
I don't fully understand. This is a strange place to me.
There is zero chemistry between any of these actors. Zero. I mean, literally, no chemistry.
Zero chemistry between any of these actors, huh? Interesting, you're stating that they never had moments of chemistry, yet there are scenes where they actually quip and tell an intelligent joke. Yes, they don't spam this throughout the entire movie every 5 seconds like in the new trilogy. However, they still have moments like this throughout the film if you actually paid attention.
Now, people have been making fun of this new scene from The Rise of Skywalker because of this particular line.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now!
Oh, it's too quippy. It sounds like Marvel dialogue. Okay, yeah, whatever. Let's talk about this for a second.
See the difference? They fly now. They have moments like that every 5 seconds in the new trilogy. It's not bad to quip or to have a joke. However, to do this every 5 seconds of the film at all times is quite annoying. They do this constantly throughout the new movies. Then, here in the prequel trilogy, they just have a few moments of humor or even subtlety. Yet you claim, oh, there's no chemistry. So, backwards, again, not paying attention to the film. The reason why people might say it sounds like Marvel dialogue, as you call it, is because they do this constantly. They don't allow the audience to breathe for a second. The prequels doesn't do this constantly. It happens, however, it's not spammed at the audience on a constant basis. There is a complete separation there.
This movie is not fun to watch. It's not even fun to make fun of. Compare this chase scene to a chase scene from this movie. Our heroes are going to be eaten by a giant monster. I wonder how they feel about this. Oh, they don't really care. These characters just can't be bothered to give a shit at all.
Just relax. Relax.
Okay, yeah, man, I won't worry. Even when they're planning the final battle, they don't care.
Once we're inside, we shouldn't have a problem.
Oh yeah, won't be a problem. No use in me being emotionally invested. The movie has low stakes, low energy, and it really doesn't allow you to engage with it in the same level that you would with any other Star Wars movie.
I wonder how they feel about being chased by a giant monster. They don't really care. Or Jedi are trained to contain their emotions, yet you'll have scenes where they'll say, oh, negotiations were short. The ability to speak does not make you intelligent. This is actually pretty subtle and funny. See, they don't quip at all times like in the new trilogy. Cosmonaut, you might have a thing for that, but you didn't even acknowledge the fact that the prequels brought this level of dialogue and chemistry behind itself. It just wasn't always thrown in your face. The movie has low stakes, low everything, and really doesn't allow you to engage with it the same level that you would any other Star Wars movie. So there are moments of depth, dialogue, and chemistry, even moments where they quit. They just don't do it at all times. The ability to speak doesn't make you intelligent. I thought you said the film wasn't engaging. That's some thought-provoking dialogue. I thought you said the dialogue was bad. See the difference between someone who's actually watching the film versus people who trashed the movie and didn't even pay attention to it, but speak with authority on it?
So yeah, personally, I'll take these corny, energetic performances over this shit any day of the fucking week, but hey, that's just me.
I'll take this corny, overly energetic performances any day over what he calls this shit. Wow. And you know what? I'll take the subtlety and nuance of the prequels. Yes, they're not always subtle, but they have just the right amount of moments like this, and I'll take that over constantly being told how I should feel. And speaking of corny dialogue, isn't it funny that people like Cosmonaut or Plinkett trash the dialogue of the movies, but the over-the-top corny dialogue in The Rise of Skywalker or the new trilogy in general gets a free pass? And people say, oh, the prequels had shitty dialogue, or it was corny. Oh, the new trilogy suddenly gets a free pass? That's hypocritical. Well, this was Tarragon, and I'm refuting Cosmonaut's claims about the prequels. Thank you for watching.